Hello everyone, welcome to Your World or Mine. Show me yours and I'll show you mine. And today we have beautiful Sian here. And she's one incredible young lady. And Sian, I'm really fascinated about your world. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's happening in your world? But welcome first of all.
Thank you, Hannelie. It's good to be here with you and to share a little window into my world with your listeners. At the moment, I'm busy packing my bags to go to KwaZulu-Natal this afternoon to venture to where the German Bert Hellinger, who was the founder of Family Constellations, began his missionary work with the Zulu people. And he spent 20 years with them, and he learned a lot about ritual and about community through living with and sharing life in this way with the people in KZN, and that had a profound influence on his life. And I'm busy packing my bags to go there and to offer the dance as a piece of ancestral work for the first ever Family Constellations intensive here in Africa. So that's what I'm busy with right in this moment, and it feels like it draws on the strands of my work in a very powerful way, in that I really look to movement and dance as a way of connecting with our humanity and with where we've come from and with where we're going to. And I've really come to realize more and more how dance infuses breath and joy and connection in us human beings, and it's a language that we have looked to forever. It's an integral part of who we are. So it's an integral part of my life, and this is what's happening.
Wow, it's incredible when you speak about what happens in my body. I get tingles all over in my cells from a somatic point of view, and really feeling it deeply of what you're sharing now. Now I'm curious, as I'm coming from another planet, what is Family Constellations about? Firstly, before we go to the dance part.
Of course, the Family Constellations it's a systemic approach to therapy, which looks at the whole system and the importance of us including aspects of the system that have been previously excluded or ignored. So it can be from our internal system, so various parts of ourselves maybe that we haven't allowed for or looked at or integrated. And it can also be parts of our family system. So there may have been family members in the past that have been excluded for a number of reasons, or there may be a trauma that happened in the family system that has gone unacknowledged because of the pain and the difficulty around it. And the understanding is that if we work to including, then we bring a healthier balance to the system. And that can also be looked at from an organizational perspective, from a broader community perspective. So what I really like, and even from an environmental perspective, what I really like about it is that it looks to our interconnections as human beings with ourselves and with each other and with the world around us, and really values that philosophy and that understanding as being paramount to us connecting with the flow of life and the flow of love. So it's about restoring love's flow and life's flow. Yeah.
It's very interesting what happens when you speak about that with me personally. It's like a window opens. It's something that, as you say, it happens unconsciously, so we're not even aware that we're not acknowledging a specific part necessarily. We might do it consciously as well, but I feel in this moment that a lot of it is not revealed yet. And we may be not even aware of the influence and the impact it has on our lives. And I really love it when you shared about the organization and the community and our environment, nature, everything, the interconnection between all people, all things, and all creatures. My next question was going to be, what about the organization and groups and communities? And now I have an interesting question for you. Do you feel, in your understanding and your experience at this moment in time, that such constellations also, that we duplicate it elsewhere? So it starts with a family structure, and does our behavior duplicate it outwards into other structures, or is there no relevance between the ones necessarily?
Well, in my experience, it's mirrored all through our system. So if we have a particular pattern of relating to the world, if our primary way of being in relationship to our family system is in one way, it is going to translate into our relationship with our colleagues. It is going to translate into our relationship with our environment. So through working with one of these channels, we are having an effect on the whole system. And so when we work on our relationship with our organization, we're working on our relationship with our inner self as well. There's nothing that's mutually exclusive. It is all interconnected, and our way of being in the world is mirrored to us over and over again in all these various kinds of ways.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I think if we just begin to explore that a little bit within ourselves and within our groups that we find ourselves, the structures I should mention, which takes me to something completely different, but it's related to this. It just triggers it. It is the fact that currently there are amazing people all across the globe who's busy redesigning new systems or designing new systems.
Yes.
And I always wonder, especially I actually looked at I had the globe here next to me, and yesterday my eyes just caught our whole globe, the Earth, in this form, and I was seeing the size of Europe versus South Africa, for example, the whole of South Africa versus Europe, and the rest of the world, for example, and pockets like that, where there are lots of people in my experience that I've met and that I'm communicating with and engaging with that are really putting in a lot of effort to design new systems. But they, for example, have never set foot on this continent or on other similar continents. And I was just, in that moment, it was just fascinating. And it links now for me to what you just shared about the constellations and its effects everywhere. That when we design systems, it must be something that must be deeply recognized and understood. Because to be able to transmute or transform any system or to create a new one, you need to have an understanding of the current one, where it's coming from. Otherwise, you'll create a mental construct which will not have any physical meaning necessarily, or
absolutely
couldn't be appropriate in a specific area because of these things that you just shared. And we also mentioned the word ancestral. It triggered something in me as well, because we can easily, what I call, create spiritual suicide, where we cut all things. We need to be good. We need to love everybody. But that doesn't mean we need to negate if we have any disturbing feelings inside of ourselves. Like you mentioned earlier, that happen in a specific construct, whether it's the business world, our organization, or our family structures. We can't just ignore it. We can't just ignore it because it will influence.
No, it's living in us.
It's living in us. So when we design new systems just from a mental perspective, I really cannot see how it can work because we haven't really included these other parts of being human. Not to judge what these beautiful people are doing. It's just when we start considering these different aspects, we have a more holistic view of what's really going on.
Well, yeah, so I'd like to pick up on the thread of what you're speaking about around the mental constructs and innovation. And I really feel like more and more we're being called to look to all of our intelligences and to really ground our innovation in an embodied, intuitive sense. So it brings to the fore for me this idea of the mind. And I really draw from the Eastern philosophy and framework of understanding that we have an embodied mind. And if we're tapping into our intelligences, you spoke about a cellular response, if we're tapping into our intelligences through our body, and through our embodied mind, and really listening through a deeper kind of a presence, with an understanding of where we've been, with an understanding of our history and our ancestry as a collective, then we can really dream into our descendants and our future. So for me, we're being called to be present in a full sense of the word. In order for something to take root, it needs to be felt in the body. It needs to be experienced and created from a holistic perspective, so that it is already living in us and has taken root, and then can be further visioned and dreamed with. So I really look to the arc of time, as Joanna Macy would put it, and to including our lineages, to including our ancestors, and also to including our descendants, and then grounding ourselves in the present with that understanding and that connection, because that allows for the transformation and the innovation to take place, because we have immense strengths and qualities and capacity from our ancestors that are living in our cells, in our DNA. And thankfully now science is catching up, and we understand epigenetics. We understand that we can access strengths and qualities of our ancestors in ourselves now, in the here and now. And in doing that, we can really then gather the collective support that's available to us, and also bring ourselves and our lineage into play, and create anew and build on where we've been, or change the structures that need to be changed.
And likewise, you mentioned the descendants as well. And that's something that I find incredibly fascinating, that it's much easier for human beings to understand, and it's most probably just where we come from. And like you say, we haven't necessarily taken the total human being experience in consideration, and parts of ourselves. With some we excluded because some were unknown, we never learned about it, we never activated those parts within ourselves, we never had the opportunity to stimulate them or to apply them in whatever we do. But from a descendant's point of view, it's fascinating for me that we can easily go back and look at the linearly at the past, like the lineage. But we are so afraid when people start speaking about our descendants, about the future as being part of something that's here, not in 10 years or 20 years or 100 years, it's here now. It's accessible through the collective intelligence to us, just as we have access to the intelligence of the past. But it's in this moment, and if we're present, fully embodied. I love all the words you use, because that's what we are excited about as well. It's for the joy generation, it's to live all our intelligences, to experiencing them all, to activate all of them, to stimulate them continuously, and more important, to strengthen and enrich them as well. And that for me is a total human experience, but it needs to happen, in my experience, here in the present moment, not when I'm fearful of the future, or where I cannot stop talking about the past, in the sense that I'm always pulled back into it. So I go out of this.
Yes. And this is where I look to the dance and movement and embodied work as the tool, and as the methodology for this way of listening and visioning. It's incredible how, when we dance, we access our creative imagination and our capacity to dream and vision. And there's a piece of work that I've been developing with a colleague, Alison Moultrie. She's a clinical psychologist and process worker, and we've been drawing on Joanna Macy's work in looking to the future people, and in looking to the best possible future, and have found that through dance, we're able to meet these imagined best possible future young people, and ask them in movement, well, what is it that we have done in the here and now that has enabled this best possible future? Show us what it looks like, and also let us know what it is that we've done that has really supported that. And it's really powerful to go into that in movement, and to feel it and to engage the senses, because you are then already living it.
I feel it all over as you speak about it. And I wanted to add to that, and then you mentioned it anyway. This is just beautiful. Our sensory imagination. It's also, in my experience, something that we never learn to tap into. We have this idea of a mental imagination. Of a lot of people have that. But our senses, just from a sensation point of view, not even our outer senses and our inner senses, but the sensory parts of our being, the feeling, but it's alive in the cell. And I know it's very difficult for people who haven't experienced it ever to understand it on a mental level, because you have to feel it. It has to be here now that you can understand the effects. So when you were speaking about that, through the dance and through the movement, you can connect to these future younger generations and allow them, through the collective intelligence, to inform you. And I'm always fascinated just by the word inform as well, because the in part comes before the form part. So through the chaos that creativity comes through, the form comes into place. But the in part, so it's like checking in. It's like when you said, we have all these inner senses that comes alive for ourselves. And I can just, when you speak about, my body wants to move naturally, because
I can see
it's enticed. It just wants to, like yumminess, it wants to feel that yumminess. And for me then, it's like we all have different ways how we will decode this information or interpret it that comes through as well. And again, we have all these intelligences that you speak about as well. And I just want to mention something before I forget about it, about what a friend shared with me last week during a corporate training session. She said to me that, and this happened very spontaneously, it was not part of our program. And she mentioned that she's in her 40s, and her son, she almost destroyed him because she was wanting him to learn in a very logical, analytical, left brain type environment. In that way, she wanted him to understand things as well. But he learned kinesthetically, the stuff we are talking about, through movement, through the sensory imagination of his body. And that is, for me, also something that excites me as personally as well, embodied learning. And now and movement, and a lot of the things that I have explored with Dr. Carla Hansen in Canada's work as well. And she explains it neurologically and from a neuroscience perspective to the T. And all her work's done around that. But it is that we learn much quicker and much easier through movement as well. So there's the two parts for me related to it in terms of just knowledge and wisdom. And when you mentioned the access to these future generations in the collective, then it's accessing the collective intelligence, but also our own intelligence. And if you then put the two together, look at what you have to play with and work with.
Absolutely.
And that's innovation.
This is the core thread, is so each of us has our own unique creative offering. And when we can access our creativity and co-create with what's arising, with what's emerging, that is incredibly powerful. And that's really why I look to the creative arts as a methodology for supporting our relationship with life, because we're then bringing ourselves in our own unique flavor and making a creative offering and telling our own stories in a way that really brings us into life, brings us to life and brings us into life, and allows us to make our offering, which is really important. You know, each of us has this unique offering, and only we can make it. So how do we access it in the best possible way so that we can live our lives fully? And I just wanted to speak back to this kinesthetic learning. I was listening to the radio the other day and was so overjoyed to hear that there have been studies that have been done about just the simplicity of walking and innovation, and how if you're sitting versus if you're walking, there's a huge discrepancy between creative thought and innovation. And when we are in movement, we access our creative potential. So just for the listeners who are absolutely freaked out about the idea of dancing, just start walking. Just start walking and allow your creativity to flow.
It's incredible. I'm also my most creative when I go for my morning walks or runs.
Yeah.
And I found with the runs, it's different than when I'm walking. So it's a very different thing, that type of thing that comes through. I just realized through all the years that when I walk, I'm more present in the moment. When I'm running, things will just pop in as well, but my body's moving, so my body loves it. So I'm the most frustrated when I cannot move. Then if you want to really put me into jail, you allow my body not to move.
Yes.
But now I really want to go to the next part of the dancing part. And it's very interesting. I've done it in the corporate world as well, where during a functional training session, I would make people dance. And it's not like ballroom or Latin dancing with steps. It's simply moving in a very gentle and specific way. And initially there's resistance, but the moment they start realizing they want to do it more. But what I found, but I found recently even more fascinating is when you ask them to. I do a lot of role play with people during functional technical training as well. That they have to role play what they've just learned about or explore together about more over than learned. But when they perform it, and I invite them, they're not allowed to speak. They're never ever allowed to speak. Then the creativity comes because they naturally start moving. People who are very stuck start moving by themselves. It's wonderful because initially there's this, like the brain locks down. What do you want me to do? I'm not allowed to speak. How am I going to present this to the others, what I've just experienced? But when they realize they have other tools in this beautiful body and through movement, I actually have short videos of it, of our sessions last week where we did it. It's just fascinating to watch it because it's people that's not used to moving around and suddenly they come out of their comfort zones and they just move. And the joy bubbles up. It's incredible, the movement part. But we just have to look at children. Look at children, they do it naturally. We don't have to tell them.
Absolutely.
You go and jump or you go and do that. They do it naturally. It's in our genes.
We learn through movement. We learn through exploring the world through our bodies. Our body is our vehicle of living. And what's actually foreign is being a talking head. So when we remember and when we return to movement and follow the body and allow ourselves to express ourselves through the body, there's such a sense of relief. That's what I've found. There's such a sense of relief and of childlike joy and delight at being given permission to return to this innate form of communication. And it is just about getting over that hurdle of allowing ourselves to take the risk to perhaps feel a little bit silly or out of our comfort zone. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting and it's really liberating to do that.
What's more liberating as well is when you do it in nature, when you do it outside. It could be a park, it could be anywhere. And when you just start putting your attention to your relation to everything while you're moving, to your relationship to everything around you. But moreover, for me, the one that I found fascinating is what emerged when you make people aware about spatial intelligence. When they start, you ask them just to look up, because they're so used to sit in a building, for example, or a classroom. They're constricted between walls. And suddenly, that intelligence opens up everything. And then they'll come back to you and say that they're now doing it every day outside of their offices. Just work outside for an hour, just to see the sky and to tap into that intelligence. And these people they mentioned as well, they become much more creative in their roles when they access that intelligence. And they do it purposefully now.
Absolutely, because we've somewhere along the way become disconnected from nature. We've through the Industrial Revolution, we've separated ourselves, and through all this incredible innovation, we've become very separate from the natural world. And that is, we are natural, we're made of matter. We are a part of nature. And so being separate from it, of course, is going to block us creatively and block our vitality. And so to reconnect and to take our consciousness to meet nature, in the words of Anna Halpern, who's one of the grandmothers of conscious dance, to take our consciousness to meet nature and to allow ourselves to move and be moved by it is incredibly restorative and rejuvenating. And what I've found is one of the most simple and effective tools that I use is to be barefoot outside on the grass or on the earth, and to allow my body to be nourished by that connection. And there's also a whole lot of scientific information now around grounding and around the importance of being barefoot on the earth. And it's so wonderful that we are reconnecting in these ways and remembering our connections in these ways, and that people are really experiencing the benefits and are taking themselves into these spaces more and more because of that. And we need it.
It's like natural therapy. It's becoming into balance, And what I love about it is we're taking responsibility for ourselves. We don't expect somebody else to do the healing part for us. We begin to take responsibility from the inside out.
And that's sustainable, and that's fundamental to well-being. You know, it's not about seeking out a guru, seeking out a therapist that's going to give you the fix that you need. The healer is inside of you, and the capacity for transformation and growth and creativity lies within.
Now, your experience from the dancing point of view, in different contexts, it doesn't matter what the context is, has that improved your way of, and I don't know, I'm using this word very loosely, memory. I would rather say understanding. Being always in movement, being through dancing, through moving, has that improved your capacity to perceive and conceive and be receptive, would you say?
Absolutely. I think on a fundamental level, what it's done for me is it's enabled me to be increasingly present. And through being increasingly present, I've been able to sense into and respond and find connections in the moment. And that's had a very profound impact on my well-being and on my capacity to create and to be in relationship. And to follow the flow in conversation, and to follow the generative thought or thread. Yeah.
I love everything you just shared in one nutshell. I love it all. I'll tell you why. The part of making the connections, I think it's completely underestimated. We have no idea what's available to us when we're present in this moment. And when we begin to, everywhere in our own ways, because we are all very different, feel and begin to see these connections that we otherwise would never have put together. Things will happen straight in front of our eyes, but because we are so used to linear thinking, we can't put it together. And a part of creativity is exactly that as well, to be able to put very different things together that has no relationship to each other from an obvious point of view. But if you then put them together, that's innovation as well, and it's creativity. But for me, it's more than innovation, it's creativity first. Because we start seeing these links between things that we would have never seen, in connections we have never seen before. But for us to be able to see it, we need to be present here in our body. Our attention needs to be present to this specific moment. If I was now thinking about my lovely holiday coming up next year, July, whatever it might be, I am not present to the connections that I can now make between what we are speaking about, because my thoughts are elsewhere. So I need to be present here. And now I can already see, you spoke about things that I'm very excited about as well, and that I'm exploring as well. Now already, I don't have to think about it. It's happening here somewhere in my whole being. I don't have to worry about it in this moment. It will play out later, and that's my experience with it as well. I don't know how to go and make notes about it, because it's already here in my presence.
Yes, yes.
And later I
And
can go and express and explore it in many different ways, in different contexts as well. And that's the wonder of it. That's playful. And that's incredible energy then that on my own, yeah, now it starts running up to my heart from my hands. That's incredible, because something wants to happen there. And I'm also patient with it. I'm present to it, that it will show me. I don't have to make it work. It will show me, which I find fascinating as well.
And I love that you brought the image of the open window at the beginning of our conversation, because it feels like it connects to that. It's about paying attention to what it is that is coming in, and what it is that we can see when we look out, and when we are present, then we pay attention to what's emerging or what's entering, and then we can create with it. And so creativity asks us to be present and asks us to respond spontaneously and meet the moment. And that's very exciting. And that's where innovation sits.
And I want to explain it maybe in a different way as well, or share it in a different way as well, is that when, say there's a crisis, like we had in South Africa, there was no water in Cape Town. Now everybody wrecks their brains, like, how are we going to do this? They go outside of themselves instead of being present to what wants to be shown to us. And that the solutions to come towards us, which is something very different. Because you can just look at it from in this way, that if I'm putting my attention to something, say I have this pen in front of me, I'm putting all my attention here. Everything else is excluded. I cannot see it in this moment. It's impossible. I'm not a chameleon. I cannot see behind myself. There's something that hovers behind myself as well. But when I'm waiting, I'm present to whatever is happening. It's in front of me and around me. And it informs me through the collective intelligence and through this wonderful intelligences within ourselves. Then there's infinite possibilities.
Absolutely. And I think that this is something that we've really needed to return to and foster once again. You know, living in a really fast-paced world, and particularly living in a city like Johannesburg, where I live, there's such a drive to continuously be in action and in forward motion, that our listening is what's stunted. So our capacity to be present and receptive and listen to what is arising. And when I say listening, I mean through our bodies, through our senses, through our openness to the moment. That's really key to being able to know where we are and how we are and what's going on and what's needed and how we can show up.
Suddenly a window that I saw earlier, as she's speaking now, that window is blasting open. So something wants to be revealed, so it's open on a little bit, and suddenly, as you're speaking now and sharing about this way of being and living and responding and creating whatever we want to call the human experience, suddenly that window is wide open. And I also see a very interesting creature. It's like a dragonfly. And for me, a dragonfly is about transmutation, more than transformation. For me, the butterfly is about transformation. But if you look at a dragonfly, it comes through different elements. Water, and then the land, and then the air. You know, there's many different elements involved. But suddenly I just see this enormous dragonfly. But it's a very, it's an opening type feeling in my body. My body just wants to, because when I'm like this, I cannot receive anything. I cannot be open to anything. So whatever I am protecting, whether it's from an emotional, psychological, whatever reason, we don't want to go into the reasons. It's simply just opening our bodies by itself. We open up to what wants to emerge and to what wants to come to us.
Absolutely.
And again, you have to be present here for that to happen. If I'm so busy, it cannot, how can there will be a collision between what's coming towards me and me, because I'm just continuously rushing.
And this is really where the kind of practice like expressive movement comes in. Mm-hmm. This is something that is innate within us, that, you know, we've been dancers probably since before we could speak. But the importance of practicing returning to this way of being allows us to access our capacity for presence. So it strengthens our confidence in being in ourselves and in connecting with ourselves authentically, and in listening to our intuition, which many of us have forgotten about, or in somewhere along the way have mistrusted. So it's about practicing returning to this way of being, and then the impulse comes for opening and spreading one's wings and really going with one's own creative expression in the world.
Yeah, so when you speak about expressive movement and expressive dancing, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. So I trained in the Sesame approach to drama and movement therapy in the UK through the University of London back in 2008. And a strand of the training was focused on movement and embodied work. So lab and movement analysis, and movement with touch through physical contact and through sound as a way of attuning to and supporting our clients' growth and development. And dance has always been an integral part of my life, and coming to dance through the training that I did, and also through dancing the 5 rhythms and movement medicine over the years, I found that this was a direct resource for me to my own emotional, relational, and physical and spiritual well-being. And I returned to South Africa in 2009 and to Johannesburg. And I couldn't find the space for me to practice in this way. And so I decided that I needed to start offering the space. And expressive movement has developed as a form of movement meditation, of conscious dance in this way over the years. So it's a form that I've been developing through holding the space and also through my own personal practice. And am now training other facilitators to facilitate. So it's of the family of conscious dance, and it's a form that is particular to my own experience of moving and of holding the space for movement.
Well, that's wonderful. I can just tell everybody. I danced before I could speak as well. I used to dance on tables when I was little. It was the only thing I wanted to do. But at that time, we were not really encouraged to do those type of things. We had to be academic. And I had to find my way after school, and I explored many different types of dance. And I was doing ballroom and Latin dancing, even display dancing for a long time. I used to dance 4 nights a week professionally, and then on the Friday night we would have a social, and I'd go dance again. So I literally danced 5 nights a week. So it was really in my blood. But then suddenly something happened. I needed something else. And I started to explore free flow dance. Now, there was different ones that I explored at the time. And on one of them, I went also on training to facilitate. And for the first time, I started dancing in my body, which is very different. I was always very performance-based, out there dancing. And suddenly it was this intrinsic, in my deeper cells, that I came back to my body. I was completely outside of my body before that. And it influenced all the aspects of my life, every single thing, my relation to the world, everything. But the one that I want to share about, something like expressive movement, which I have been able to also enjoy and participate in, and other free form and conscious dancing forms, was that's my time with me. There are dances where I can really go and be very expressive externally, which I love doing as well, but this is soul nourishing. And it brings me directly back into my body and into balance. And I just want to share with everybody, this is not woo-woo dancing. People is not making you do funny things. It's not that you have to learn steps at all. There's nothing like that. It's you're present in your body at that moment. And yes, there's a bit of guidance, but it's you who's driving this beautiful vehicle of yourself and how you feel that day. And I just want to share a personal experience with me. Through an accident I had earlier this year, I couldn't move for a very long time. I couldn't lift up my arm, my right arm. And recently I went back to have a movement, expressive movement experience. And all the parts that made me feel so frustrated because I couldn't move for like 3 months. I really couldn't move. I couldn't even go for a walk or run. And suddenly, but it took seconds to come back to my body. Seconds.
The body remembers.
The body remembers everything. The minute I walked onto that floor, into that space, I could literally, because I'm so sensitive, could feel it in my cells. And it was, yes, I'm back. It was the most amazing feeling. And if I now look at my life in the last 3 weeks since I had that experience, it's incredible what's happening to me on a personal level. My presence, being here in the moment, not being frustrated, that I could move wherever I am, in whatever context, and that I can make other people move as well. It's the wonder of it. So everyone, I would like to invite you to explore with Sian specifically. And Sian, I want to share something, if you don't mind, of my experience.
Yes,
recently,
please, Hannelie.
was your voice. Now, girls and boys, I know this young, beautiful woman for a few years now. And I can't even remember. I think it was when you came back from the UK, most probably 2-3 years later.
It has been many years.
Yeah, it's like 8 years that I met you the first time. And there's something that happened also in your own process that I noticed and that I became aware of. Your voice, your presence in your voice was, I had to keep myself to myself that I must continue moving, but your voice was drawing me. There was something coming through your voice, a higher power, if I can call it that, that was so incredible that the power of that, just listening to that, and just even if you're not somebody who can physically move, like lots, like jumping or walking around, moving around, but just sitting in your body. With Sian's voice that night, I realized that if you were just being able to move your body to the side or to the front, depending on your situation or your physical health, something would have happened to you. Because it was so powerful. And I bring that one saying that, in my experience playing around with the senses and with movement and embodiment, especially embodiment, is that at some stage along our journeys, and that's at least my experience, everything becomes one. All our senses becomes one. We can no longer distinguish them as a auditory or a visual or a sensory sense. They become one when we're fully present. And something naturally happens with our voice as well. It's in those moments that it's almost impossible to describe it to other people. It's again like an embodiment experience. You have to feel it yourself. You can't just speak about it. But I just want to say to you that that was my experience that night. That you as a being sharing that space with all of us and holding moreover also the space for us, which is also important in such experiences, that you can feel safe and you don't have to worry, and somebody's keeping the total space for everybody, that you are taken care of. That's the most beautiful feeling, to then express yourself in whatever way. And one day you might want to express yourself outwards like this. And another way, it's very, very deep, deep intrinsic. And that's all cool. There's no right and wrong there. But for me, it's like a clicking in of everything inside of you as being the person who's so beautiful, and the being so beautifully holding the space for us and guiding us along the way. was I could feel that coherence is the word I'm looking for. Coherence. There was coherence. And I just want to share with other people, in my experience facilitating different types of experiences as well, coherence does not happen often. And for the simple reason that it's ourselves that are there. There's like lots of people in the same room. To have coherence is not easy for a facilitator of any type of experience to create and to co-create, because we actually co-create with each other. But it was your voice that was bring that coherence into being. I don't have any other way to explain it, but I think you understand what I mean.
Thank you. Yes, and working with my voice and finding authentic resonance through speaking and also through sound and singing has been very much a part of my work and my calling. And so for me, what's really important is that the voice is an extension of movement, and when we can find resonance and when that resonance is in tune with both our bodies moving and our voices, then we really are this channel for creativity and for flow.
And because in your voice already my cells start moving, just listening to you. So I want to bring it back to every human being. We all have that capacity. And it's through beautiful practices like expressive movement that we can find and discover those parts in ourselves, and that they can come into this click, click, click thing, this complete coherence inside of ourselves, that then impacts how we show up in the world, how confident we are, how safe we feel. We no longer rely on other people to make us feel safe or circumstances.
Yes.
Because the security, the safety happens within ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Sian, I'm just so delighted because the window is just opening up bigger and bigger. And I believe we are all, and in my experience as well, we are all here to reveal something. I think you mentioned something similar in the beginning when we started sharing, is that every single being is here on earth to open a little window for others. And that window can open a little bit according to how we allow it to open and how we use beautiful practices along the way to support us and to guide us, or it can just a complete open window. But it doesn't matter, we don't have to compare them. It's simply to realize, but I'm here to reveal something to somebody, to this whole planet. And for the well-being of all, not only for myself, of all.
Yes.
And then I'm really getting excited when I'm so grateful that I have been in the position to meet and to experience such beautiful experiences like expressive movement.
Thank you. And it's so...
And it also has a very gentle, for me, expressive movement. When I hear the word expressive, I'm quite an expressive person. It's like, wow, out there. If you think you're an introvert, you don't like expressiveness like that, don't worry about it, because it's a very gentle space.
Yes.
Very, very gentle space.
And it's personal, and it will mean something different to you than it means to somebody else. And it also depends on where you're at and how you are at that moment in time when you enter into the dance. And what's so beautiful about this practice is that we definitely do keep surprising ourselves. So you might find an introvert bounding about on the dance floor, and vice versa. You might find an extrovert really finding a deeply internal state of peace and center. So it was really wonderful to hear about your personal experience too, because it reminds me that it is both deeply personal and a collective journey.
And it's for me, as you're speaking about as well, the other thing, it's a whole person experience.
Yeah.
And what I mean by whole person experience, it's not one or the other. It's everything included, whatever we feel, whatever we experience in that moment. It's all the parts of ourselves magically working together. We don't have to think about anything. Like if you look at performance dancing, a lot of people think about the next step. What must I do now?
Yes.
In the beginning, until your body gets it, until your body's way starts taking over. But here is absolutely nothing. You don't have to remember anything. That fear is not necessary because it is not needed at all. which for me impacts our experiences. Because if we are fearful that, oh, we will look stupid, or we will look silly, or we will forget a step, that's something very different, because then our focus is on that and not in this embodied, beautiful flow that naturally happens in our body.
Absolutely. And I want to just then come back to the importance of the fact that this is practiced in a group, in community, and the kind of group that we have been fostering over the years is one that is open and accepting and supportive of expression and of a wide range of expressions and feelings and experiences. And it's such a relief for people to step onto the dance floor and to meet authentically in movement with other human beings that just allow one another to be. And for me, that's a fundamental part of the practice, is that we're fostering a way of being together and a way of relating to one another that is open and authentic and supportive, and the opposite of critical, judgmental, and destructive, you know.
Thank you, Sian. This is most incredible. And
thank you very much for having me on the show.
I'm really curious about your constellation experience coming up as well, because I can already just see, I have myself attended one of these type of experiences, a family constellation. I was just present to it. I was one of the roles. And I saw the beauty of it, what was happening. But now, my sensory imagination is going wild to see what your movement class is going to. I can see it already happening. The effect of it, of movement onto that process, the combination is going to be extraordinary. Yeah.
The founder of African Constellations, Tanya Myberg, and I have been working together for 4 years now, and we're offering ancestral connections, which is this piece of work that brings together expressive movement and family constellations, and the effects and the benefits already that we've experienced both in ourselves and in the participants has been incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. I can feel it. I really can feel it. And it suddenly reminds me of one of the mothers of Africa, Mujaji was her name. She had the kingdom of the Mujaji. I don't know, somehow it just links with that. I don't know how and why, but there was suddenly a link about that.
Well, the roots of both forms that I have been trained in are African.
Interesting. Wow.
Even though they're Western practitioners that came over to Africa, they learned through being here, and they took the essence of what they learned back with them and established these forms of therapy.
I guess she's very happy at this moment in time. I can feel it in my legs. Thank you so much, Sian. And can we share your information or contact details after the podcast with others, so they can connect with you about any type of the work that you're doing, the wonderful things that you're sharing? That would be so wonderful. And do you have a last message for, especially our ones who came more recently, our younger ones? Do you have a message for them, perhaps?
I guess the message would be to follow your creative impulse. And if you feel like getting up off your chair and putting on some good music and having a dance, do that. And if you feel like stepping out of your office and looking up at the sky and opening your self to the embrace of the sunshine, do that. Just allow yourself the opportunity to respond to what arises for you.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sian, once again, for being with us today. And we look forward to exploring with you in the future as well.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you.